Welcome to another segment of TIE Talks. At TIE, we're on a mission to bring the collective wisdom and voice to the entrepreneur ecosystem through some of the exceptional leaders who come and share their experiences, whether they're entrepreneurs, investors, or corporate leaders. Today, we have a very special session focused on the intersection of smart capital and impact investing. I'm going to be talking to two fellow charter members of TIE, Mewah Hari and Michelle Cheo. Mewah is a very accomplished global C-suite executive, a leader in the technology sector, who now heads up as the CEO in a company called Terrascope, which is a global end-to-end decarbonization SaaS platform. Mewah also sits on a number of boards of large global organizations. And of course, Michelle Cheo, CEO and Vice Chair of Mewah Group, a listed company that's involved in the food sector and a very large player in that segment in the region. Michelle is also the Deputy Chairperson for World Vision Singapore. Mewah and Michelle have both been very committed to bring the best of their leadership, their experiences, and the values that are core to them to create the opportunity for founders that are looking to build a valuable, profitable business with a focus and anchored on impact, creating impact. So can I ask you both, what prompted you to start the Modern Manifesto? I know you've both been investing for many years, but you've taken this to a different level of commitment in terms of what you're trying to do.
So I've been very passionate about the climate. It's something which I've worried about for years, and there are multiple stories for it. So when Mewah and I met over a dinner, and it was almost like kindred spirits, because I really felt that I met someone who understood my passion for the climate, and also in our small way trying to do something about it. So I was investing on my own, and so was Mewah. So when Mewah and I started exchanging ideas regularly, then the idea of doing it together, when the values that both Mewah and I have are very similar, helps us to be very disciplined about it, and so creates a regularity, and the discipline also hopefully makes us better at what we do, and then we can add better value to the companies we invest in.
If you take the day jobs we come from, we're operators by principle, right? We're not investors by principle. Yeah. And if you think about the investing world, there's a big debate on like who are better investors. Do you come from a investing finance background, or do you actually come from an operating background where you have more empathy with founders? And we said actually that should be bullshit. We should try it. We should see if actually operators can be really good investors. But there is a core foundation and a principle that anchors Modern Manifesto, which is that we would love to be ambitious about returns, and we would love to be ambitious about changing the world and doing the right thing. And so that's how we came together. We started to invest in themes that we commonly felt passionate about. I think one was very clearly climate tech. But as we thought about other things we were really passionate about, Michelle was actually very passionate about health. And we said, we want to improve health outcomes. We want to be able to apply the multiplier effect of technology to it, so why not? Right? And the third thing that I was very passionate about and close to originally, that we both then ended up doubling down on, was small owners and using technology to enable small owners. In a way, it's a very small angle towards improving income inequality in the world or democratizing opportunity. So that's a little bit of our story of how we came together. I do have to say, it's also an excuse to see each other a lot. Michelle keeps us very disciplined, right? So she'll put these meetings on weekends for us to get together. But our excuse is that we do it over chai, right? And so that's also us feeding our soul and keeping our friendship alive.
Yeah, no, I can see that it would be a really good combination, right? Let's talk a little bit about smart capital and what that means. For people to understand the difference between angel investing in general and smart capital and the approach you're taking. And both of you, of course, have very strong networks as well, not just your own experiences, but you've got access to some exceptional people through networks you may have, whether it's through YPO, whether it's through TIE, whether it's through XA. So an opportunity to proliferate this beyond what you're doing. What has your sort of experience been in leveraging those networks?
Oh, I think the networks are great in the sense that we have been able to source deals from the networks. Through the networks, we also meet many people who are from different industries, and we are able to maybe help the companies by opening up our network or to gain various technical expertise. And certainly we met through TIE, so it's been beneficial. And I think TIE does try to play its part in nurturing young entrepreneurs and providing the mentorship to help them to grow as well.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to it. One is how do we source our deals and what is the role of the networks that we are a part of? And then the second is what is the smart part of the capital that we actually provide to companies that we then back, right? And I think the networks, be it TIE or YP or XA, all three that you mentioned, each brings a different flavor and a different access into a community and pool of entrepreneurs, right? XA is very tech, TIE is very tech, but it also gives kind of a wider view into Asia. And YPO can be quite global, but it tends to give a different view into maybe non-tech anchored investments, right? And so it's nice to have that diversity to be able to pull from. I think when we think about the difference really between angel investing and smart capital, and we've really anchored ourselves around smart capital, is if you're an angel investor, you probably have a thesis around what you would invest in, right? Some people will invest in everything and just say, hey, good founder, I back it. That's a very valid thesis. Others might approach angel investing and say, I know that these theses work and I want to actually back these theses. Also a very good way to do it. In our case, we actually put the added lens of it has to be impact oriented. But even impact is too wide, to be honest. We have to learn as investors what works and what doesn't. And for us to spend the time, we had to narrow the lens. That's why the three verticals. But then it's a question of, is capital enough? And are you a passive investor, right? And in our case, we've chosen not to, because one is to say that, hey, I've given you a check and you use my name, and the next investor you want to open doors to or the next customer, we're lending some credibility based on our name, right?
Yeah.
That's certainly, I think that's always up for grabs. But actually what we feel is that because of the deep values connect that we have to the impact space, we can not only open doors to potentially customers, open doors to investors, other investors to bring to the table, but also bring that operating layer know-how in a limited capacity. We're certainly not able to give time to the equivalent of being a board member or an advisor on an active basis, but to be able to check in every quarter and kind of say, is this a moment to pivot for you, founder A? Or have you thought about a different retail distribution, founder B? Right? That's the impetus we bring to the piece, which makes it not passive, but actually smart capital.
Yeah, but when you're looking for these deals, do you find enough of these?
I think what we are trying to do is to be selective. And Maya and I do talk to each other to make sure we both bring different angles. And as we discover the deals, sometimes we also find holes in maybe some of the ideas, etc. So I think where we are, we're relatively happy with the portfolio we have. We hope to continue to add value.
So I look at the pipeline very much like Michelle said, it's kind of like, do we have enough volume in the pipeline of deals we look at?
Yeah.
I feel like we feel yes. But because of what's going on with global capital, we're actually, like most VCs today, feeling like there are some really good founders and portfolio companies today. So how do we double down and redouble down on capital into those so that we actually let them flourish? And that's been the focus this year. If you talked to us last year, it was like, no problem. We were doing at least 10 deals in the year. And we said
deals.
we will do no more than 10.
Yeah.
We totally blew through that. And, so it's interesting. So I mean, we have to pace ourselves. We are quite excited about this, no question. But I think this year needs a different muscle from Modern Manifesto. It needs kind of backing the founder, really being creative, helping them understand valuation. What will they get access to? How do they extend runway for a period of time? No different from any founder in the world, but I think that's also our role this year versus last year.
Do you guys disagree as well on things?
I think we sync. And I think the most important thing in any partnership is the values.
Yeah.
When two of us are bases on the same values, and I think both Maya and I really want to make impact in what we are doing, we're actually okay to also listen to the concerns of each other, and then I would rather say that we have a dialogue to find what we think is a solution that we can both agree on. But I think the reason we're able to do this is because we have the same value set, which is very important. Both of us want to make an impact. And when both of us want to make an impact, I think the discussions around whether I feel something is better or when she finds something that's better is actually not about disagreeing, but finding the creative solution forward.
I think we're stronger for the diversity of experience and thought we bring to the table. And in the fact that we're running Modern Manifesto, I always say it's a nice pretend VC. We're a pretend VC in a fun way, right? What do I mean by that? We operate as if we're an investment committee. And we had principles that we laid out saying, is it a 2 yeses on a deal or is it not, right? And how we have tackled getting to 2 yeses has been interesting. We haven't always been resolute on the yeses sometimes, right? We may have some concerns around it. Michelle may have conviction on one deal and I may be a little weaker on my conviction, or the flip side. But what has been interesting is to be able to trust each other's judgments in the places that really count, right? And so that's how we pull from each other's strengths. Michelle brings tremendous operational capabilities of running physical world businesses. My background has been really around tech and growth. So if I were to have very strong conviction on something that needs operational capability to scale, and she doesn't, that's where I would kind of say, maybe not, right? And to me, this has been such an amazing experience of the underlying trust, which then makes us benefit from each other's strengths and skills. And I'm not saying we don't make mistakes, right? We do, but we go into our eyes open and say, okay, let's try it and see what we learn from it.
So heartwarming to hear. And I'll tell you why, because I think everyone wants to have an opportunity to do something meaningful with their good friends who share the same value system and find a way to have fun along the way. And actually, it doesn't hurt if you're making money along the way as well.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. I think you're underplaying it. I would sort of say we would like to be ambitious about value return, right? And I think there's no shame in saying that we really want that 10x return on our dollar spent.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no shame in that. I think it's worth being ambitious. This is just beyond Modern Manifesto and us. If I think about leaders around the world, why does it always have to be a trade-off between purpose and profit? And can we find a way to be ambitious about both? And there's a huge debate I always end up in with different people because they're like, oh, there's always a trade-off. There might be a trade-off in the moment, in a deal we are looking at, but actually in the ideology of saying, let's hold ourselves to a bar where both have to exist, could be a really interesting take on how we run businesses, right? And no different from Modern Manifesto. That's what we're trying to practice and live and breathe. So unashamedly expect returns from our investments.
Yeah, and look, and that's the way it should be, because that's the only way, you're going to see progress in those companies if they're anchored on purpose, but it can't be at the cost of profit, right? Yeah. And look, I think impact investing is the fastest growing segment in the investment space. And everyone realizes that, there needs to be greater urgency in solving for some of the problems that the world is facing, with the exception of, a couple of statesmen, different parts of the world, some who are boasting about having the largest oil reserves and they're going to pull it all out and create economic returns through that. So you do need this all the more. Yeah, but you do need all the more to counterbalance some of those steps, right?
I actually really believe in impact investing. And the difference between impact investing versus the different other types of capital is that when there's financial discipline, the founder has to think differently. And I think for some of the world's challenges we face, we actually need to be able to find a model which we can do at scale. And so the idea when we started to do this impact investing is to find the founders who can dream at scale. And we provide them the momentum and the start so that they can build a solution which hopefully they can pivot to impact multiple people or multiple countries. And I think that's why the financial discipline that Maya talks about is so important, because if we are able to get the returns, this is the start, but they'll be able to find more capital, they'll be able to find more revenue streams, and this in a way allows them to build their operations to become much bigger, and so hopefully we can make a bigger impact in the world we live.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of evaluating these businesses, obviously you have to look at the business model, the impact they're creating, but you both talked about values, so clearly that's always an important piece. Is it the founder? Is it the business model? Is it the impact they're creating? Between those three, how do you rank those?
I am very focused on the founder, and I'm focused on the motivation of the founder, because sometimes they may have the great ideas, but there are people who are unable to pivot. There are people who give up halfway. There are people, and we've seen, founders don't get along always. So the motivation and the grit to stay the course is actually very important for any business to survive. But then also, obviously, we also have to talk about the business idea and whether if this business idea is scalable. If at the end of the day, it's trying to solve something which has a lot of competitors, or if I can't see the ability to have a revenue model or the ability to reach scale, then that is probably not something which we are looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a good combination and balance between the two. You don't need rocket science business models, but you certainly need business models that can grow and scale non-linearly over time.
And do you find enough businesses that have that convergence of being able to scale from a financial standpoint and create impact as well?
I think we've not found a dearth of businesses. Sometimes they're spread across the world. They have different market conditions that they're tackling. I'll give you an example. We have a portfolio company that does rechargeable battery technology for consumer goods. Very interesting. Their positioning was very heavily focused on outdoor usage of long-lasting batteries that you can use a USB-C to charge and then take it away. But actually, it is such a powerful unlock if you can swap out all the regular batteries everybody uses in their day-to-day life as a consumer to swap it into rechargeable batteries, especially if the recharging is easy, simple, plugs into something you charge your phone with, right? So it's not that the business model itself is so deeply oriented to impact, but actually can be a massive impact unlock. So that was an interesting example of taking something that was not, I think they always meant to build for impact, but was positioned differently. Or take a business that's actually very focused on health and thinking about kind of extending patient comfort, especially with lung conditions, etc., into the home and make that give a lot of extension, not having to go to the doctor every time if you're an asthma patient, etc., using hardware and software intelligently. So this is a company we invested in called ChestPal. These are all things where there is true utility to life and consumers, but at the same time, there's a true impact you can have in a way that can scale non-linearly, right? So we found interesting businesses to invest in.
Yeah. No, I actually want to dig into some of these examples, because it's a good way to inspire entrepreneurs that are seeking to do something similar, right? Michelle, I know you're quite, apart from climate tech, quite passionate about health tech as well. Love to hear your, some examples from you and what you've seen are opportunities.
So we invested in Chestpal, which is a digital stethoscope with a founder who had a sick child. We also invested in this company called Amli that looks at microbiomes. So there's a lot about gut health, but a lot of the technology is from the States. And so this company is looking at it from an ASEAN angle. So as you know, our health would be slightly different this way. So that would be on the health tech side. In terms of enabling small businesses, I love this idea about visuals. And we invested in this company called Kitty Cat. And the whole idea is to lower the cost for brand owners, right, by creating delightful visuals for them, whereby they can scale in other platforms. And so they don't need to have an entire gigantic digital marketing team, but they can outsource this. And so therefore, this aids small businesses. So there's a whole range.
Yeah, no, Kitty Cat's a very, very interesting, exciting business. Yeah. Since you talked about looking at the motivations of founders, and you gave the example of Chestpal, and what I picked was he had a sick child, and he did that. She had a sick child. And I think one of the examples I wanted to share in this, I met one of our charter members in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago. And actually, I didn't meet him at Silicon Valley. I met him at the G20. We were sitting at dinner together, and we got introduced. We both realized we were both charter members of TIE.
Oh, nice.
And we got talking. He sold his company to AstraZeneca in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, for about $2.5 billion. His father was sick with 200% blockages in his arteries. Now, this guy is a scientist. By the way, he was the inventor of Ventolin, right, when he worked for Glaxo.
Wow.
So the patent's in his name. And he decided to solve for this problem. And he went to all the doctors. They said, well, his father's too old for bypass, and arteries are too clogged to open up using angio. And he's actually invented a device after 3 years of research that has completely changed interventional cardiology, right?
It's amazing.
So, and I studied more about this, and I went to his clean room and his plant in Silicon Valley. And I get inspired so much by people who bring the best of their wherewithal to solve for problems that they've seen themselves, and they're so committed to that. So I think finding founders who are like, your founder of Chestpal, probably is a great way to evaluate what they're trying to solve. So, but anyway, I wanted to come back to both of you. Financial metrics obviously are very important. How do you actually measure impact and how do you hold your founders accountable to that?
I think that the measurement of impact and measurement of scale in the business, in the ideal scenario, should go hand in hand, which means that if you've done the right things to ask the questions and build the foundation of the business, scaling the business means scaling the impact. Let's maybe take another example that we haven't talked about. It's a company called Elevated Foods that we invested in, discovered them through one of the networks. And this founder actually has run a lot of agricultural businesses himself over the years and has stepped into transforming smallhold farmers in the fruit produce section. And in this instance, as he can actually transform, as the scale of the business grows, his revenues and his business metrics should grow really proportionally to improving yield and improving outcomes and improving the how of agricultural cultivation of smallhold farmers. And so in this instance, impact and business metrics should be really fully aligned. So the more he's able to drive scale, the better. Now, what's interesting is in our assessment of the business, there were some ideas on how to ensure that his own business is aligned to the outcomes of the smallhold farmers. So is there a proportion of increase in yield that he takes as a percentage of revenue, etc.?
Yeah.
These are ideas, right? And in a world of a startup, these ideas pivot from time to time and things like that. But I think that those are the really interesting ways to be able to tie business outcomes to impact outcomes. And if the business model accommodates for that, all we need to think about is, are we enabling this business to scale, right? There might be instances where the battery company we were talking about earlier has to think about source of raw materials for the battery. Like, is it mines from one location or the other? Are those clean mines? Are they not? Right? And those are the questions where not being a passive investor on our end is really important. As from the impact lens, we have to ask the hard questions in the inputs into the business, right? And but it's also the fun part for us as investors, is to be able to straddle both worlds around the operational side and the investing side of this.
So you do get involved in some of those decisions in terms of where they're sourcing from. I think good on you. I mean, I think that's a great way to start to make the change right from the get-go, right? I mean, those are things that you can influence and control. Do you see a big role of partnerships and collaboration with enterprises in terms of enabling your portfolio companies?
Okay, so just now for the company that Maya mentioned, after we invested, they actually were able to take a big grant from the government. Now, this has obviously put them in a very strong segment because through the grants, the scale of impact allows them to focus on the operational details rather than to constantly go out to raise money, right? If, in the Trustpower example we gave earlier, they also take funds, research grants from the government in order to do innovation. So I think that there is a place for private-public partnership in order to grow the business. I think it does mean that sometimes at the beginning, it allows the entrepreneur not to be focused on constant valuation gains, but to focus on building a platform first. And I think that it does require from the investors a little bit of patience, because they're not waiting for the next higher valuation, but really to build something which can reach scale and impact. But it also means that there has to be more patient capital as they focus on their operational details. I think that is generally good because it allows the founder to be skilled in making impact rather than choosing founders who are only focused on having a skill set of raising capital, which I think is a good focus to have, right? Building a rock solid business.
So just shifting gears, I mean, you've both obviously been in the corporate world. Michelle, you obviously run your own family business, listed company. Maya, you've been in the corporate world for a long time. And with what you're doing at Terrascope, you still engage a lot in that ecosystem. Do you see an opportunity to leverage some of the large enterprise relationships for partnerships you can bring in for your investee companies?
Yeah, I think that's a very core premise of the smart part of the Capital for Modern manifesto, right? And I'll give you an example of how I see this play out in general. And Michelle and I certainly try to employ that principle into our portfolio companies. There was a company that actually produces animal-free cheese that's on its journey to produce animal-free cheese. They're called Change Foods. We actually sourced them as a deal through Thai.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Go Change Foods.
Yeah, really fun company. And what they're doing is they've actually found a way to leverage milk protein called casein in using that to be able to build animal-free cheese, which obviously has a very positive climate impact because dairy and methane has a tough relationship with climate today. Now, as they've been going down this journey, they've actually met a large corporate in the traditional food and commodities space who has taken an interest to then say, can you marry this innovative engine that you are anyway building to actually, and can I give you some of my capabilities around distribution, etc. Right? And that partnership opportunity we see as a great one in general for startups and corporates, right? Corporates need an innovation engine because they're not as innovative in-house from a speed perspective as often startups are outside. But they have tremendous capability to bring distribution, to bring revenue, which a startup could spend years building, right? And so we think that there is a very natural symbiotic relationship between these two. We've seen it play out in Change Foods. We've been trying, we've invested in a legal tech company that uses AI to change the world of how legal contracts get reviewed. Imagine democratizing that for smaller companies and smaller owners who could maybe not afford a big legal team in-house. And we're actually helping make those connections with corporates for this company in this part of the world, right? So we see this symbiotic relationship play out a lot.
Yeah, so maybe, I mean, the partnerships can take many forms. So I was studying the sustainable aviation fuel, right? So as a way to decarbonize the transport system, which I think we really have to do something about. I could see, and after having studied this, I could see the amount of investment dollars and the challenges with manufacturing this. So when I saw Flyro do their pitch, I could immediately see that the big companies are trying to solve the big manufacturing, capital-intensive things that need to be done in order to do this. But there is a place for a smaller company like Flyro who could look at the supply chain and solve that specific need for them. And so that was why we made the investment in Flyro. So the partnership is clear in the sense that there's a role for the traditional businesses to play and to do R&D, and also some startups. But there's also a place for enablers. And this is someone who's focused on the craft niche. And I actually see the potential to be very big for them as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting space. But in terms of advice for founders that are looking to create impact and build a rock-solid business, and for that purpose, seeking investments to get started, what advice would you have?
I'd say the foundations of building a business that solves some large existential problems in the world is a good one. I would say I would tell the founder not to think about solving climate or solving income inequality or health as a moment of hype. I would actually say, can you fundamentally build in such a way that you are solving a big problem in the world and adding value while actually building innovation in that space, right? If you can marry those two things, that's the most authentic place for a founder to go pitch for impact capital. And that's the right way to do it. The wrong way to do it is to say, seems to be a lot of money flowing into climate now and not this other vertical. What's the quick business fix I can do? That to me does not ever succeed in the long run, in my opinion, right? Building a durable business is very, very important, but doing it from a place of authenticity is incredibly important too.
Yeah, not to belabor the point, but entrepreneur's journey is very, very difficult. There won't be enough capital. There'll be more problems that one can deal with. It's not for the faint-hearted. I think the people we feel will succeed are those where they are driven by something which is deeper, that they won't give up, but they will keep persevering. The stories which I have heard from founders, none of them are easy stories. Actually, every single one, they can enjoy success superficially to the outside world, but when you go further down, it is hardship after hardship. And that really has to be something which founders need to know. And so before they embark on the journey, don't just look at the successes that people have. take a look and say, can I do this for the long run? And normally when they are married together with their passion and their motivation, they will find the energy, even when they have a down day, to pick themselves up again and move forward. So it really is not for the faint-hearted.
I will say one thing, Michelle. Just listening to you made me feel a lot better as a founder. I mean, when it comes to women, you know, I've always idolized my mum, who's no more, but you know, she was the first anesthetist from India to do a PhD. I've had most of my life, I've had a woman prime minister. My bosses have been women. So I don't really know any better. I actually think women are way better at dealing with adversity, being logical in certain things, and bringing a sense of empathy, but also resilience. I'd like to ask, from your experience, have women entrepreneurs in this space of being able to make money and create impact are proving themselves to be a little bit above the rest?
I don't think we ever thought about this from a women angle to start with. It's really interesting, but we never did. We started this together because our values aligned and we happen to be women. But really how we became friends over the years was because we both love sustainability and we both were urban farmers at the time, like really focused on being sustainable on our own produce. So that was the resonance for us. But it is interesting to kind of now see, I go back and look at our portfolio from time to time and say, do we have women founders in there or not? I think it's a fallacy to say, do women founders do better, right? I don't think we want women founders to do any better. I think we want to say, is there enough founders in the mix that we are actually funding? That's my personal view. And Michelle and I have never talked about this, so I have no idea what she's going to say next. But I think the challenge is not necessarily are women founders better or not. The challenge is, are there enough women founders? And if they aren't, is that a systemic issue? Is that okay for the world? Is that not? I think that's where I spend a lot of time introspecting. And I think it's okay to say that in technology, there is a correction of founders who have technical skills who are coming into the mix. In non-technology worlds, I think it's a little bit more of an even plane because you're not looking for as technical a skill. But in our mix, we have women founders. Our Chest Pal founder is actually a woman who has technical skills and she comes to the table. The legal firm called Advocate, the legal tech firm that we have, the founder is a woman. She's actually a lawyer partnered with her co-founder who's a technologist. So it's heartening to see these stories. I think the gauge I use for myself is, are we finding enough of them? Are we making sure that they have capital?
Yeah.
And there's a secret advantage of, incidentally, Michelle and I being women, our network might be more balanced towards women. Our relatability to their lives, to their way of communicating might be more open. Maybe we seem more approachable to women founders than not. I don't know that for sure, but maybe. So does this give us a better shot of having a more balanced ability to support women founders? That's all.
Yeah. So I mean, I agree. We've never talked about women. At the end of the day, the bar we measure ourselves is, are we getting good financial returns, right? So that's important to us. Are we making impact? So those two are important. I think what we are looking for is impact and scale of impact. I think the only dialogue regarding women, and I'm just talking about society at large, right, is, are we giving them a fair shake, or are we prejudiced because of us being stereotypical? And I would hope that for Maya and ourselves that we aim to give them a fair shake. We're not trying to give additional concessions, right? I think that would be patronizing. I think whoever we have invested in have amazing stories, super capable, and a vision which they want to grow. And as long as we view in our lens that we are not prejudicial in any way, I think that's what we can bring to the table.
Yeah, and I think that's all we can hope for, right? That you bring down all these barriers and you're creating a level playing field so that you get the best of different thought processes. That's what diversity is about, and whether it's in any shape or form, right? Whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity, nationalities, it's that diversity of thought which is so important.
Yeah. Even though we write angel checks, which aren't massive, but important in that phase of a founder, the question we do ask is, hey, if you have no women, and if you're a male founder and you have no women on your team, I don't think we hold back the check today, but we definitely ask to say, is there a plan? Why don't you, right? I do the same when I actually go be an LP in a VC fund. I don't know if they laugh at me later and say, what the hell was she asking? But it's very interesting when I ask some of the VCs, and we've both invested in some VCs as LP. And when I've done that, I've looked at the team, and the investing team is entirely male. And sometimes I will say, actually, I typically like to see some diversity. Then they bring out a very junior investment analyst or an intern somewhere in the world that they have on their team. And we both know what's happening, and we smile, and I say, listen, when we review the investment next year, I'm hoping this person is actually an investment partner level person, right? And so I do see the change happening, but I think it's important to ask the question. Whatever check size I write, I only have the right to ask that when I'm writing the check. So I think we always, kind of have that in the back of our minds, but it's heartening to see that there are women founders coming through. Still not quite at parity, I would say. We say about, in all of the companies I've invested in over time, it's been 30% of the founders have been women, not 50%. So that there is still some room to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm quite hopeful. I think at least the generation, as we are transitioning across this generation, I think it's going to change.
That's right.
I'm quite hopeful. I'm a bit of an optimist. Yeah. But on that note, I wanted to ask one question as you guys go. With your founders, how do you help them, understand the distinction between ideology and true impact? Because, the two are quite different.
Yeah.
Do you ever get into that discussion with them?
I think when our founders come to make a pitch, they're actually very problem focused, and they're very specific on the problem which they're going to solve and how they are going to solve it. So it actually doesn't really go into the ideological phase, which I think would be a little bit, that would not be what we're looking for.
Yeah. I think when the ideology can translate to a business problem, like Michelle said, that's the perfect answer to it. And sometimes, actually, one of the founders has actually transformed from being an ideology-first person to actually being a business-first person over time. And that's a journey that he needed to go through before, and we incidentally invested after. So it's not bad to have the ideology. Often that's the root of kind of impact investing. But if it's purely ideology and you don't quite know how to turn that into business impact, it's a bit of a challenge, right? This is what we're trying to solve for. This is what smart capital is trying to solve for, or non-concessionary capital is trying to solve for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the kind of guidance you can give them along the way and that's the role that you can play, right? To catalyze and help them, stay the course, or maybe in some instances carve out a new path. Look, it's been wonderful speaking to you both. Michelle, Maya, always inspiring. I think you both have so much experience and your own values that you can bring in. And I hope that you continue to do what you're doing, have fun. Clearly, it's doing well for you guys. You guys look very good. So as you build this up, I hope that it's going to turn into something bigger and better. And you end up helping the world solve some of those problems.
It's been a pleasure to chat with you, Amit.
No, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It was a wonderful session with both Maya and Michelle. I want to thank our viewers for watching this. Please do give us any feedback, suggestions you may have on topics, speakers, what you'd like to hear more about. We're all ears, and we hope that you will continue to follow Ty's journey through Ty Talks, our podcast. Thank you.